Hello dear listeners, welcome back to my channel. My name is Selena, I'm a clinical psychologist, so let's get right into it.
Anything I say, even Nick stop, he would use it and make an exposing video or threaten me with it. I don't know, I was just scared. I don't know how to describe the feeling. It's not just scared, but it's also like almost like ashamed, like, wow, I made him mad because I changed my mind. Did I change my mind? But I never had the mind to talk about Veronica.
So the type of behavior that we're seeing here from Stephanie actually very much reminds me of typical behavior of people who have survived abuse and mistreatment, particularly for individuals who tend to be more insecure anyways. When they are in the proximity of someone who might have a tendency to gaslight, which means a tendency towards deliberately wanting to change someone's perception of reality, then over time it can truly happen that a person in the position of Stephanie would not trust their own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors altogether. If a person who tends to be more insecure hears often enough that they have said something or that they have done something which they actually haven't, then at some point it will become their own reality, which will make it even more easy for them to be vulnerable for future abuse. One's confidence can slowly decline, and a sort of hierarchy can establish itself between the two people, in which one person would be considered the one who remembers things, who knows the truth, and the other one who's not trustworthy. When one endures this long enough, this can lead to serious complications like depressive symptoms or even heightened anxiety symptoms. A person might isolate, they might withdraw from friends and family because they might feel that they're somehow turning crazy. And from Nikokado's position, or someone who would be in the position of Nikocado in this case, it can give one a temporary boost in confidence when one feels like they have power over the other person, which would be a power of knowledge, but also the power of controlling the other person. This does create a power dynamic because, again, one person would be considered the one who remembers things well and who is not crazy, and the other person who tends to forget everything and who's not trustworthy with their own intellect and their memory. This only shows how vulnerable someone can be when they're not very secure or when they're not very sure of their own reality. And it is completely understandable that we would have insecurities and anxieties. This is completely human and normal, which makes it even more sad that once we encounter someone who has more manipulative tendencies, that we might be more likely to be a victim of that, actually.
I didn't want to be in close proximity with him, and I was just kind of like standing off to the side, and I didn't want to say anything but, oh, I'm so nervous, because I felt like if I said I'm uncomfortable or I'm scared or why did you do that, he would just get more and more increasingly angry with me. I had this feeling of I just need to do whatever I can to get through tonight and tomorrow, because we have collabs scheduled tomorrow, and just be done with it.
If we look at Stephanie's behavior here, we can actually see a freeze and a fawn response, which are responses to nervous system dysregulation. And this doesn't always need to mean that there's some kind of trauma involved, but since we know the type of things that she has endured in her own past, it shows us that the type of reaction that she's having in relation to Nikocado is quite similar to her abuser at the time where she was abused. Because she's feeling overpowered, controlled by someone, and as if she can't say no, the reactions that she's feeling or the internal processes very much resemble the processes that she went through when she was going through her abuse. So we might be thinking, why is it that our body in some situations doesn't allow us to speak, or why are we freezing in such situations? But these are all survival strategies, actually. If we look at our nervous system and the type of responses that we have, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, these are all strategies to survive. If we feel like there is an actual threat, then we will go through these responses, and the last thing that we will resort to basically is freeze, because when we are freezing, at least evolutionarily speaking, we are playing dead, and this is our last resort, so that the other person can't hurt us, or so that we can't engage with them in any way where they can hurt us even further. What might happen at the same time is that we might dissociate, which can also be a reaction to traumatic things. And the reason why we dissociate, which again actually is quite a smart strategy of our body and of our mind, The reason behind that is that when we dissociate, our feelings basically get cut off. We're not perceiving our environment and reality in the same way. It doesn't hit us the same way. So in a way, we are distancing ourselves from our own perception of the world. And this again is a strategy to reduce the pain that we would feel in that moment. It's very important that we ground ourselves, that our nervous system feels calm, grounded, and safe enough for us to feel like it is okay for us to experience our emotions. When we are dissociating and when we're not feeling our emotions, we're basically not living, we're not alive. We're just a ghost or a corpse that is wandering around the world.
Because I don't want him to get angry. I don't want him to make a video using these words and trying to say all these things I said about Veronica. I just wanted to get through tonight. And that sounds crazy even to me. Like, Stephanie, you are 24, you should have got up and left. But I just couldn't. I was just so scared that I couldn't.
When she's saying that she just couldn't, this is actually true. We know that from brain scans in situations where people are experiencing post-traumatic symptoms, that certain brain regions actually shut off, such as the speech region or the movement region, which really shows that there is a brain correlate to the experience in that moment. And this is maybe a good moment for us to think about the situations in which we felt like we couldn't really speak up, or in which we felt like we wanted to run away and escape the situation, or we wanted to approach someone and fight for ourselves. It's good for us to understand what our stress response is, or what our main stress response is, so we know what we can do in order to stay present with ourselves.
I remember even texting my dad at that time. I was talking to him in Korean, and my dad was really concerned because we weren't really talking about anything serious. I just wanted to sound as if I had gotten the worst news. And Nick was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, just a lot of really bad family stuff going on." I was so scared of him that I didn't even want to act differently around him. But at that moment, I was so shaken, I knew I couldn't be goofy right now. Just try to shove down the need to cry and the shove down all these hurt and scared and uncomfortable feelings that I had.
If we actually pay attention to Stephanie's behavior here, we notice that she is engaging in all these mental gymnastics almost to think of a way to make it seem like she needs to go away for a different reason. And this is really an example of how when you're around people long enough who you're afraid of, you will start to almost need to mirror back the calculated nature of the behavior, which would be that Stephanie is also calculating through which steps she needs to take to escape the situation. Now, one you could argue is a perpetrator and the other person is the prey or the victim. But at some point, we are reflecting these strategies back just so we can survive with the person who is doing the same to us.
I kept trying to find a way out. I mentioned multiple times in a very joking way, like, "You guys don't need me." Nick would say things like, "Stephanie, we're all tired." So I felt like that was a signal to me, like, get it together. Because of that, I started getting more and more cautious, and I was like trying to make jokes, like, "It looks like a heart." Oh. And I just felt like if I didn't make him feel like everything was okay, he would just get more and more angry with me.
When I watched this part, I noticed that it was quite difficult for me to separate Stephanie's anxiety and her panicky nature from my own emotions. You can see that she's really embodying her internal experience, which paradoxically would make it much more likely for the other person to pick up on it and behave strangely or differently. And this really shows us that first and foremost, we need to ensure that we are present with ourselves, that we can mindfully observe what is going on, and that we can internally calm ourselves down. Now, I understand this is easier said than done. This is a process that takes a long time. If it feels like our mind is running away and we are out of control, then it is much more likely for us to leave the situation with more harm. So it can really be a lifelong endeavor to feel secure enough with ourselves that we can openly and honestly express our opinion without overreacting, that we can show compassion and understanding to the other person. Although it might be difficult at times, it is quite difficult for the person in front of us to interpret such things negatively if we're just very clear in our communication. When we walk around things, when we find all these strategies to escape a situation, then the other person doesn't get the chance to learn what is going on as well. And if we know that we have openly communicated, then we know that we have done everything that we could. And what the other person is then doing is up to them and will show us how we will proceed with them in the future. Now, in my experience, I have noticed that the persons that I once felt very scared and anxious around actually reminded me of other people in my past that have indeed abused me. So when we notice that we're feeling scared, that we're feeling anxious or quite a bit different around a certain person, then most likely it's not about that person in front of you, but about a different person, a different situation way back in your past that has left a wound in you. So in a way, you're projecting that experience that you had back then onto this person, and it makes you feel the same way that you felt back then. But the thing is, times are different now. We are adult, we have grown up, we know better, which means that we can actually take care of ourselves. We can approach ourselves like a parent in a way. We can hold our own hand, we can calm ourselves, and we can embody the person that we needed back then when we endured these difficult things. This in a way also teaches us to have a more accepting and kind relationship with ourselves that might make it easier for us to speak our mind.
At the end of the ASMR, because it was a whispering one, Nick turned to me and he said, "Is there anything else you'd like to say?" And I just remember feeling so gutted. Like my heart had dropped to the ground because I thought it was going to be another interrogation.
What would you like to say?
Thank you for watching us eat these. And so I said, thanks for watching us eat this food. And I'm just, at this point, I'm really just trying to go home without angering him.
Now in this situation, when I, as an outsider, look at this little portion in which Nikocado speaks to her, I don't really have any alarm bells going off. To me, it really seemed like he's closing off the video and wanting her to say a last word. I don't think that in that situation he really expected her to speak about the whole situation with Veronica. But Stephanie seems to be quite highly sensitive towards these cues at that moment, and that is also an important thing to notice. I'm not negating what Nikocado has done to her, but when we are particularly sensitive or we have endured trauma, we also need to be aware of the ways in which we can feel highly sensitive to certain cues, maybe even misinterpret certain things. Because when we endure trauma, our perception of the environment is in a way sharpened towards certain cues. And these cues would be cues of danger. So whenever she gets the slightest hint that there is something that could be dangerous to her, such as someone making her feel like she can't say no or she has to express something that she doesn't want, then immediately she would get that reaction in this situation, that flight response.
There's no way Nick did not know that I was so uncomfortable for those 30 minutes. Even after the video, it seemed like he was still the one that was upset with me. I had no right to be upset. There was no, hey, are you okay? I know it got a little heated. Like, I almost feel like I did tell him. Did I? I don't think that I would, but what if I did? Or what if I'm not a good communicator? And what if I said, yeah, let's do it, but maybe I should have said, but without talking about Veronica and everything I told you in private? I started questioning myself. I started being like, why did you do that, Stephanie? Why would you ever make him feel like that? Kind of like an internal battle of half of me being like, why did you do that, Stephanie? That was your fault for misleading him. And then the other part of me was like, it doesn't matter. You were still uncomfortable in the video, and he did not care.
At this moment, I'm wondering about what Stephanie has endured in her own childhood, actually, because the way in which she's doubting her own reality really shows me that this goes deeper than Nikocado only. A person who would have been raised in a very secure way with parents, let's say, that show them continuously that they matter, that they are fine the way they are, they would most likely not respond in such a doubting way as Stephanie does in this situation. So I'm wondering if someone made her feel like she's stupid or she doesn't know things when she was younger. I'm wondering if it's maybe just a thing of her genetic disposition, her tendency towards anxiety, coming together with her experiences in the past. But I wouldn't be surprised if she had authoritarian parents, let's say, or emotionally unavailable parents that made her feel like she would need to keep the peace in situations and she would need to ensure that everyone is happy and that everyone feels secure, which would mean that she would have to give away her own security.
I get home and I broke down. I mean, I just went straight into the bathtub. I just didn't want to even smell like the food we had just eaten. And my fiance he obviously knows something's wrong. And so he's sitting there and he's saying, babe, what happened? I was like, I don't know if something happened.
That little bit in particular where she was saying that she didn't even want to smell like the food that they ate, it very much reminds me of post-traumatic stress symptoms, where even the slightest reminder of something traumatic or of something very difficult to endure bring back the memories. So her feeling like she still had that smell on her made it more likely for her to remember what happened in that situation and unconsciously happened in the situation where she was abused in her own past. So that demonstrates the heightened sensitivity that a person has when they have endured something traumatic.
To be honest, what it felt like, and the only way that I've ever felt like this to any degree in my life prior to Nick, was a couple years ago. And I vowed I would never find myself in a position like that ever again, where I felt like no really didn't have a lot of power. That night I was really pushed into a really dark place that I never thought I would be in again. I had a breakdown, and it was unlike any other breakdown I had. It was one where I felt shame, guilt, because I did say I would talk about it. Didn't I? I don't know. He said I did. So I must have. And then this shame of, why did you even stay for the third video? Why did you even laugh with him? Why didn't you tell him, no, Nick, I don't want this. No. Why didn't you tell him no? After everything that's happened in the past, I told myself I would never, ever feel like that again. I would never feel like that again.
It's actually incredibly sad to see this portion, and I'm feeling how my eyes are actually tearing up a little bit, because you can feel how self-critical she is because of her behavior in that situation, or the lack of action that she took. And this is one of the most saddening things with folks that have endured trauma, that more often than not, they will give themselves the blame. They will feel guilty and ashamed for what happened to them, although someone else has taken an action. And in a way, it's also beautiful because there is a force that is coming out of her. There is a sort of fire that you can see in her, that little bit that actually knows how to stand up for herself. It's not like she's just at the mercy of Nikocado or of people who might have more manipulative tendencies. There is something in her that actually fights for her, that wants to stand up for her, but that part has just been shut down. It has been neglected, and a person needs to nourish that part of themselves again so it can express itself and come out in these situations where it needs to, where you do need to stand up for yourself. So now you can really see that there are these different parts that are in conflict with each other. On one hand, she's stressed and insecure and going through this flashback or response similar to a flashback. On the other hand, she is so upset with what Nikocado has done to her. She wants to stand up for herself. And you can really see the conflict of those two things coming together. You can also see it in her body language, in her presentation. She's both crying and in pain, but at the same time she's elevated and she's moving and forceful. So it's a very powerful and beautiful demonstration of how, although we might have been victimized, there's always a part in us that can still come out and fight for us.
I was in and out of sleep until around 2 p.m. At this point, I had already missed text messages from both of them separately, and I ended up calling Zach at 2:20. And when I called him, I didn't mention anything that happened yesterday. So I said, you know, I was up all night editing. I know I should have gone to sleep early, but I woke up, I'm not feeling too great. I think I have to cancel today. For some reason, the thought of texting Nick at this moment, because I had missed calls and missed text messages from him, gave me this like I started getting very short of breath. And so I texted them, and I'm just gonna go through just the whole thread of text messages. And hey guys, sorry I've been in and out of sleep all afternoon after staying up late after getting back. I don't think I'll be able to film any collabs today. I'm feeling really sick and I realized I had a few sponsors due before year end that are really time sensitive. I'm so sorry, I hope you guys understand, but I'm really happy that we knocked some out yesterday.
So before she gets into the responses of Zach and Nikocado in that situation, it is important to notice how deep her tendency towards appeasing and peacekeeping really goes. You can tell in the text message that she's over-explaining, that she's feeling very, very sorry for the situation in which she has been mistreated as well. And I want to bring in here a maybe slightly controversial opinion. So with this highly appeasing or hyper nice behavior that might not be authentic, I do think that it could be classified as egoistic behavior. And I see ego as a spectrum. So you could have one extreme where you're overconfident, you're way too assertive, think very highly of yourself. And then on the other hand, you have extreme insecurity, you don't believe in yourself, you find yourself worthless, or as if other people's opinions matter more. And the thing is, in both situations, you're not seeing yourself clearly with all the aspects that you have. And to me, that really feels like there's ego stepping in. So both directions is actually ego. And that would mean that she has a sort of filter at all times that makes her perceive herself and other people differently. So this is also the case for people who, let's say, have narcissistic symptoms. They don't see themselves realistically. They don't notice the positive and the negative aspects that they have, because every person is really a composition of good and bad traits, right? No one is perfect. And when we acknowledge the things that we can and can't do, then we're truly seeing ourselves realistically, which means that we can also be more present.
And I put my phone down, I put it on silent, and these are the next messages I got. You just now realized? Stephanie, I have been sitting here for 5 hours. When you were going in and out of sleep, you should have picked up the phone and given me a call, not leave me hanging. You didn't like it when Veronica did that to you. So no, I'm sorry, I do not understand.
So the primary feeling that I get with Nikokado's response is one of entitlement. There's not a lot of understanding for Stephanie's experience. So on one hand, I can understand why Nikocado would feel let down, because in a way they have made a plan and Stephanie couldn't hold up to that plan, independent of whatever reason has led up to it. Nevertheless, when we are empathetic or when we have understanding towards people, we notice that things sometimes don't go as planned. So let's just forget all the things that happened between the two of them before. In the case that Stephanie would cancel such an appointment, a person of course could feel let down, but I do believe that we must hold the capacity to try to put ourselves in other people's position or understand where they're coming from. We do have days sometimes where we don't feel good. Sometimes we want to isolate or we want to cancel a plan. And it is much more authentic and honest of us if we're just open and we say that we need to cancel something, because we would be doing ourselves and everyone else a disservice by going somewhere while we don't want to do it. We would reflect it in our behavior, we would reflect it in our mood, and that would then influence the other people as well. And one of the most important things, at least in my perception, is that we have a trusting relationship with ourselves, that we know that if there's something that we don't like, that we don't want to do, that we can stand up for ourselves.
I texted him back. I am so sorry for making you feel that way. I sincerely apologize. I was so drained and slightly out of it this morning, and I'm so upset I didn't call you back earlier because I would never want you to feel like I don't respect your time. Again, I'm truly sorry. And out of respect for our developing friendship, I do want to be transparent and let you know I was uncomfortable with yesterday's video. I'm so sorry if I let you think or miscommunicated in any way that I wanted to talk about Veronica, but I truly did not. I mentioned that I wouldn't mind addressing you and me as it pertains to Shutdown, that neither of us had any hard feelings towards each other after what happened. And I did give you my perspective on what happened when we hung out, and I felt as if it was misrepresented in the video. I've mentioned to you many times that although Veronica and I aren't friends, and I am hurt or annoyed by some things that happened between us, I have absolutely no ill will towards her, and I feel some compassion for her situation since I've gotten to know her prior. Again, I understand this is your video, and I respect your feelings about the situation, but this is how I feel. Again, I'm sincerely so sorry for not getting back to you in time this morning, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay, and I am so sorry for this morning. He texted me back. Then why did you tell me at your house that you wanted to address it on my channel? Also, why are you texting this to Zach? I messaged you privately. And I responded, I want to address the issue here since all three of us were in the video, and I also owe Zach an apology for this morning and not keeping him updated on the schedule. I'm so sorry for any inconveniences I've caused. Again, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so sorry if I made you feel that way. I wanted to let you know because I didn't know that there was a gap of miscommunication and understanding between us till the middle of that video we were filming. I was okay with talking about Shutdown as it pertains to just you and me. Again, I apologize for any misunderstanding there could have been. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay, and I'm so sorry again for this morning as well. He responded with, you already talked to Zach this morning, but ignored me for 5 hours after that. Don't play games. I texted it back and I said,
So while it might look like Nikocado is very assertive and confident and secure, his sensitivity towards Stephanie not texting him for 5 hours might indicate that he has attachment insecurity, actually, because I see this commonly with persons who had very unstable relationships with their primary caregivers in terms of them not receiving consistent care in which they found attunement and understanding. And when that happens, then a person becomes much more sensitive towards cues of rejection, and not responding for 5 hours could be interpreted as rejection. So we can really see that Nikocado in actuality seems to be quite insecure, just that it shows itself in different ways. What we see with Stephanie in a way is a bit truer to her internal experience. We can tell very easily that she's insecure and that she's doubtful of her reality, whereas with Nikocado there are more defensive structures. So he feels quite insecure, he feels quite little and insignificant, but his experiences and his genetic disposition came together in a way where his coping mechanism developed to be a mindset of, I'm the best, I'm the smartest, there's no one above me, and I deserve to get whatever I want. This type of entitlement, again, usually stems from insecurity that is just so highly masked that the person might not even notice themselves. If you found this video interesting or insightful, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this one. Feel free to share your opinion in the comment section. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.